How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Steven Talks, and today I am going to be talking about my personal favorite movies of the 1990s. Those are formative years, man. I was a child of the 80s, a teenager of the 90s, and still very much a movie lover, and I saw amazing films in the 90s. So, again, I wish that I could squeeze every single movie that I love from the decade into this video. Unfortunately, I can't. So I'm just going to choose just a few to give you a taste of my taste of the 1990s. So to start it all off, we're going to go with one of my comfort movies of the 90s. I adore this movie. I bought the soundtrack years ago and actually still have the CD to this day. And that is Empire Records. It's a fun, awesome little movie, you know? You got a group of characters here who are all working at the music store, Empire Records. One of the employees, Lucas, finds a whole bunch of money in the manager's office when he's closing one night and decides to take it to Vegas to try to double it, triple it, whatever, and he ends up losing it all. Turns out that money was going to be used to save the empire because the store was in risk of being turned into one of those like big corporate music stores. And so these characters have to do everything they can to try to save the empire. And it's just a great movie. I mean, again, you've got a cast of people that you've seen in a million other movies and TV shows. You have a guest appearance from Guar. It's Rex Manning Day in the movie. All of these things mean everything to the people who love this movie. If you haven't seen it, you're just like, bro, okay. But yeah, I love Empire Records. I adore the movie. Now, in the 90s was when I was in high school and, of course, then graduating. I graduated in 97. And in my first year of college, a lot of my friends went to the same college as me. And we all lived in the dorms. But one of our friends, Robbie, got an apartment. And his apartment was just the go-to place for all of our hanging out. And in his apartment, he had a TV, a VCR, and essentially 2 VHS tapes that were in constant rotation every time we went to hang out. These were 2 movies that I saw so often that I have both of these movies compartmentalized in my brain. Probably the entire shooting script is inscribed into the jelly of my cerebellum. The first is Dazed and Confused. A fantastic, fantastic movie. All set in the span of a single day of the last day of school in 1976, where, again, you have a wide group of characters, actually a couple of them that would go on to be in Empire Records. Some of them are in high school. You follow some of the kids that are just leaving 8th grade and are about to be freshmen in high school. All sorts of crazy things, hijinks, and endlessly quotable. Has an amazing soundtrack. There's so many great songs in this movie that they had to make 2 soundtracks for Dazed and Confused. I love this. I love this movie. The reason that I think it's so successful is because you didn't need to be in high school in 1976 to thoroughly enjoy this movie. It managed to capture that universal feeling that we all get when it's the last day of school. You know, there's that excitement. Everyone is just pumped up. You have a whole summer ahead of you, full of possibilities. Everyone's kind of buzzing about, like, what are you doing tonight? Where's everybody hanging out tonight? What's going on? Like, it's just it's such a seminal time in your life, that last day of school feeling, and Dazed and Confused captures that perfectly. So yeah, that was one of the movies that was on constant rotation. The other, which when I talk about these two movies, I think it's going to be painfully obvious what our main activity was hanging out in Robbie's apartment. But the other movie that I saw basically whenever Dazed and Confused wasn't on was the one and only Friday. That's right. I mean, it's Friday, man. Like the movie that basically blew Ice Cube up as a film actor. It introduced the world to Chris Tucker. Just like Dazed and Confused, it is set on a single day, the day from the title, where Craig and his friend Smokey essentially are trying to come up with a huge sum of money that Smokey owes to Big Worm, and he gets Craig involved in it. And just like Dazed and Confused, ridiculously quotable, so many amazing characters all throughout that film. It's Friday. I don't know what more to say about this. It's a fantastic movie. It's one of those movies that never gets old. Like, I can watch Friday constantly and never get tired of it. It would go on to make a few more Friday movies. I will say this. I will go on record as saying that I actually think the sequel next Friday is better than Friday. That's just my personal opinion, because that one's got Uncle Elroy, Cousin Day Day. Like that, the characters in next Friday are legitimately hilarious. I love both of those movies. But Friday, when it came out, was part of a batch of movies that there was a bit of a boom in the industry in the early to mid 90s as far as filmmakers getting a voice that they previously didn't really have. And I think the thing that really set that off was at the tail end of the 80s when Spike Lee gave us Do the Right Thing. Now, on top of that movie just being a phenomenal movie, it did show a lot of Hollywood executives and people in the industry that there were filmmakers out there that needed to have a voice, and that they needed to make art that reflected basically their lives, how they grew up, where they grew up. And we started to see this kind of influx of filmmakers doing that, which was amazing. And so while Spike Lee was kind of holding New York down with his films, through both music and movies, we started getting our attention over to South Central LA and all of the surrounding areas, Watts, Long Beach, all of that. In music, you had Dr. Dre, Snoop and everybody, Tupac really just casting a lens over to Cali. And that became reflected in the movies coming out as well. One of those filmmakers was John Singleton. And John Singleton would give us Boys in the Hood. This is a Criterion edition that just came out recently. This is Singleton's Hood trilogy, where you get Boys in the Hood, Poetic Justice, and Baby Boy. I love Boys in the Hood. I love Poetic Justice. It's got my girl Janet in it. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. I admittedly have never even seen Baby Boy, so I'm excited to dive into that. But Boys in the Hood, just like Do the Right Thing, became this huge moment in the film industry where you were being shown a very specific spot and what goes on in that very specific spot. Especially with what was going on in the world in the early to mid 90s. The thing that always amazes me when you watch Boys in the Hood is the constant sound of sirens going by, or the constant presence of helicopters. I mean, it's throughout the entire movie, and very rarely do the characters even acknowledge these things. You know, every now and then they may kind of glance, but it just shows you how used to all of this they were when they lived in South Central LA. And, you know, it's like living in a war zone, man. And, you know, you're seeing little kids running around in the streets while cop cars are flying by in the background, going to God knows where. It's an amazing movie. It's absolutely amazing. And Boys in the Hood, I think, is the biggest reason why Ice Cube ended up making Friday. Is because, you know, up until then, he was just one of the dudes from NWA. And he was going solo in his music, but then being cast in Boys in the Hood, you were kind of like, man, this dude actually not a bad actor, man. And yeah, that really set Cube off right there. Another movie from the 90s, and another one, I guess, a pair of filmmakers that really, oh man. This movie, I think, would kind of be like the, oh man, how do I explain this? The more intense cousin to Boys in the Hood. It still tackled the same subject matter, but it did it in a way that even made Boys in the Hood look a little bit light and fluffy. And that was Menace to Society. And this was what? The Hughes brothers. Yeah, Albert and Alan Hughes. Man, Menace, like, this movie where Boys in the Hood, you know, dealt with some really heavy topics, but even in the end of the movie, there was still this kind of glimmer of hope of, you know, things going in a better direction. Even when you had a lot of the characters who didn't make it, there was still some that did, and you were just kind of like, well, all right, there's still someone that's moving on and doing what they want to do and getting out of this. Man, Menace, like, there is not a whole lot of hope in Menace. This movie is way more violent and bloody than Boys in the Hood was. By the end of it, man, it's just a gut punch. And it shows you the flip side of it, man. That where sometimes there is hope, sometimes with certain people, man, there's just no hope. And I kind of like that you have both sides of the coin with those movies. So, yeah, if you've never seen Menace to Society, give this one a check out because it is amazing. But as far as all of these filmmakers getting a voice, we really did have a boom in the 90s as far as that. So, I mean, even at the beginning of the 90s, you had House Party, man. Kid and Play getting their very own movie, showing what it's like when the parents go out of town and it's time to have a party. This has one of the best soundtracks in the world. You got Kid and Play doing the Kid and Play. You got Tisha Campbell in it. This movie is so 90s, it's not even funny. You know, what? Martin Lawrence, too. Speaking of Tisha Campbell. Like, House Party is amazing. It is a great movie. Toward the end of the 90s, you got Love Jones. Now, Love Jones is a fantastic love story told over the course of, well, we're back in New York City in Love Jones. So you're dealing with beat poetry, the seduction of the rhythmic word over a stand-up bass in a room full of cigarette smoke. And Nia Peoples. So all of these movies are fantastic. And the 90s, like I said, was just this boom of amazing filmmakers finally getting the voice that they needed to get. I guess part of this would be with the next movie. Now, again, as I've previously stated in my other videos, I'm a huge horror fan. I love horror movies. And if I had to pick my favorite horror movie of the 90s, hands down, it would go to Candyman. This movie scared the shit out of me the first time I ever saw it. I still think it's incredibly creepy. It's the story of a white woman going into the projects of Cabrini Green to do a research paper on an urban legend known as Candyman, who turns out was a slave back in the day who fell in love with a white woman. People revolted and they ended up doing some really horrific stuff to him, covering him in honey so that the bees attacked him. They cut off one of his hands and put a hook in the stump. And now he essentially haunts Cabrini Green. And she very much goes into the situation like, I don't believe this. I'm writing a paper on it, but I don't understand why people who are living a hard life, they're attributing all of their hardships and everything onto a mythical figure. And by having that mindset and voicing that continuously throughout the beginning of the movie, she ends up with the unfortunate instance of meeting Candyman. And he proceeds to mess her life up, man. But this movie, again, is so brilliant. It's so creepy. You've got Tony Todd. You can't talk about Candyman without talking about Tony Todd. This man and his golden baritone voice gave life to one of the most iconic characters in horror. Candyman is terrifying, but he's a gentleman. He is, one of the scariest individuals you will ever meet, but he's born of such tragedy and pain that you kind of get it. I get why this dude's pissed off. I would be the same way. One of the biggest things that I love about Candyman has to be the score. Now, this is a movie that is set in an urban environment. Like I said, this takes place in all of the big high-rise apartment buildings of Cabrini Green. And with the score, they got Philip Glass to do it. Now, this is a guy who's renowned for having very odd, kind of weird time signatures and, a very unique artist. And what he did was he gave this very urban film the most gothic, scariest score that you could ever give it. It's all booming pipe organs, where you're seeing huge apartment buildings. What you're hearing is like fog-shrouded graveyards and spooky castles. And I thought that was the most brilliant choice that they could have done because it gives Candyman that classic gothic feel. It's a brilliant movie. It really is. It's based on a short story from Clive Barker. They fleshed it out and made it incredible. I'm a huge fan of the newest Candyman that came out a few years ago that Jordan Peele helped produce. I thought they did a fantastic job with that. So, yeah, I'm all on board with some Candyman. The next one is a seminal movie in my life as far as being a horror fan because it is the movie that made me the horror fan that I am today. As I said in my other videos, I really was not a huge horror fan for a majority of my life. There were horror movies that I did like, that I enjoyed, but as far as being like I am going to watch as many horror movies as I can kind of fan, that started, it actually started probably in like 2000 or 2001, even though this movie that I'm about to talk about came out in 1999. But I was reading something, either on the internet or in a magazine, about a movie that was being shown at festivals, and it was causing massive walkouts at the end. And that when the director was actually there at the festivals, people were like berating him and just, like, how dare you make a movie like this, and just clutching pearls and all of that shit. But of course I'm like, well, I need to see this movie now. hopped on the internet and it's like, oh, well, I can buy a copy of this on DVD. So sight unseen, I bought a copy of this movie. When it came in, I popped it in and I saw a movie that was unlike any movie that I had seen before. It very much lived in its own world. It was hard to classify. I mean, you could definitely classify it as a horror film, but as far as just trying your best to like adequately describe it, it was confusing. It was incredibly disturbing, but it was also absolutely amazing. And that was Takashi Miike's Audition. Man, this movie blew my mind. It's the story of a widower who has been raising his son alone for quite a few years, and his son is now, in high school. He's about to be leaving for college, and the guy's like, I kind of am lonely and I'd like to get back out there and meet someone, but he's also ridiculously old-fashioned and close-minded when it comes to the idea of getting a wife, because he's like, well, she needs to be subservient to me. I don't want her to have a job, but she can have a hobby. That's okay. And his best friend works in the entertainment industry, and he's like, listen, I've got an idea of how we can find you a wife. We will hold a fake audition for a movie, and we will cast we will hold auditions for all sorts of women, and you can sit in on the process, and we'll say that you're one of the producers, and you can ask them anything you want. And then once you pick the one you like, we'll come up with some BS excuse about, oh, the funding for the movie fell through and whatever. So that's what they end up doing. And one of the girls that comes to audition is Asimi. And man, she is kind of a dream come true for him at first. She's very proper. She doesn't work, but she does have a hobby, or she used to be a dancer, but she doesn't anymore because she had an injury. And she just seems to be everything that he is looking for. Everyone else around him is like, dude, there is something about her that unsettles me. Like, I kind of get the creeps when she's around. And of course, he doesn't listen, and it goes on from there. I don't want to spoil anything, because one of the amazing things about Audition is seeing where this movie goes. For the first, I would say, 45 minutes of this movie, it reads as a very straightforward kind of like melodrama. And you're watching it and you're going, well, I don't understand why everybody freaks out about this movie. And it's right at the 45-minute mark that the director, Miike, totally flips the movie on you. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, okay. Now we're doing something weird here. And it just goes from there. After I saw this movie, this made me want to find more movies like it, which then led me down a rabbit hole of so many Asian horror films. And once I started going through them and really enjoying them, I was like, wait a minute. There are literally hundreds of American horror films that I have never seen. I've heard of them, I know of them, but I've never actually sat down and watched them. And so I made a promise to myself that I was going to try to watch as many horror movies as I could. And I'm still going down that route to this day. And it's all because of Audition. So yeah. The final movie that I'm going to talk about is probably one of my favorites of the 1990s. One of my favorites is Trainspotting, which I have actually talked about in a previous video when I talk about my favorite movies of all time. So if you want to see that, definitely check out that video. So Trainspotting is one, and the other is the movie that blew the back of my head off the first time I watched it. I thought it was brilliant. I still think it's a brilliant movie. It is amazing how it has aged because it's just as relevant today as it was when it came out in 1999. And that's Fight Club. Based on based on the novel by Chuck Palahniuk. This, just like Trainspotting, this is one of the rare examples where you have filmmakers who take a really, really good novel and somehow end up making a great movie from it. And that is very rare for the movie to somehow surpass the source material. Excuse me. But Fight Club does it. I mean, every element of this movie works perfectly. The cast, the soundtrack, of course, David Fincher, what he does with the movie, the visuals that he came up with. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing what they pulled off. The first time that I went to see this movie, I had just seen The Blair Witch Project, like maybe a month or two before this movie came out. And I went to see it about an hour away from where I was living. And that was the first time that I had been in a theater that had stadium seating. And that stadium seating blew me away. Because for any of you watching that weren't aware of it, back in the day, movies, every seat was floor level. And you're looking up at the screen like this. But stadium seating, you know, the screen's right there, but the seats rise up on an incline so that you're even with the screen. That was a brand new concept to me in 1999. So when I saw the trailer for Fight Club and I was like, I need to see this, I convinced my friend Will that we needed to drive an hour away to the awesome stadium seating theater to watch Fight Club for the first time. Now, you would think, being the genius that I am, I would have checked ahead to see if it was even playing at that theater. Nah, why do something silly like that? So we drove an hour to the theater to find out that it wasn't playing there. It was only playing in one other theater. And we went to that theater, and I think the movie had been on for like 10 minutes. And I don't do that. I don't walk into a movie after it started. I want to be there to see the whole thing. So we ended up driving an hour back to our hometown to find out that it was playing at the local theater and they were about to have the last showing of the night. So we come walking up like, hey man, we're here to see Fight Club. And those people were so pissed because like Fight Club is a 2.5 hour long movie. And they were pretty much convinced that no one's coming so we can shut this shit down early. No, me and Will were the only people in the theater. I loved it. I thought it was the best movie I had ever seen. I still rank it as one of my favorite movies of all time. Like I said, it's kind of ridiculous how this movie has aged because of the time that we live in now, where we have Andrew Tate and these boot camps for men who pay thousands of dollars so that other men can tell them whether or not they're a man or that they're man enough. And, you know, Fight Club is a pitch dark satire of what happens to a guy who is so obsessed with the concept of being a man and being manly that his personality fractures. And you have a modern day Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde where, you know, it's toxic masculinity to the extreme. To about the most extreme it can go to. It's a brilliant story. Like I said, the movie itself blew me away. It still does. It's a modern classic as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, there you go, guys. There's another round of movies that are very near and dear to my heart. Thank you. If you've made it this far, I sincerely appreciate you. You know, thank you for listening to me talk. And I'll see you next time and we'll talk about something else. Take it easy, y'all.